Hi guys, I'm glad that I'm here again. Today I wanted to film a recommendation video for the quarantine, but because the week was not the best week, I would prefer to stop for a little bit and chat about a book that makes me feel very happy. Having said that, if you don't know me, hi, my name is Clara and I'm the owner of this channel, Think Path, where I talk about books. Today we are going to talk about Desayuno, Júpiter by Andrea Tomé. Desayuno, Júpiter is a YA contemporary slash magical realism novel written by the Spanish author Andrea Tomé, and it's my first book by the author, and I believe it's going to be a compulsory buy for me from now on. I read this book, I think, back in October or November, but before that, after that time, I couldn't actually sit down with my feelings regarding the book and create a book review. I have tons of books to review yet. Probably some of those are actually from before that time, but I wanted to talk about this book because, as I said before, when I finished it, I felt warmth here, and it's the kind of book that I feel I need today. Um, this story is the story of two girls, Ophelia and Amoke, who live both in Wales, if I'm not mistaken. And when they actually met because a famous author who is very sick asked them to work for them. One as a nurse, Ophelia, and one as a personal assistant, Amoke. And from that moment on, they will have to interact more often, and they will see that in Virginia Wanacott's house, who is the author, things are a little bit weird. Sometimes things move alone, or sometimes uh, the computer starts writing things on its own. This is the story of how the two friends, or the two women, become friends, and how that changes over time. And this is the story about a war, and about a ghost, and about the ability of dealing with grief and forget oneself because of that grief. And this is a story of overcoming certain stuff. This is a very complex story that I really loved. I love this story because although it starts as a contemporary normal YA book, you soon discover that there are paranormal things going on. There's a mystery that Ophelia and Amoke have to um, kind of discover or try to unravel, and it deals with Virginia Wanacott, who is the very elder author that they work for. Virginia Wanacott is one of the secondary characters in the story, but it's almost as protagonist as the two girls. She it's a very famous author, up to the level of J.K. Rowling at this point, although I have the feeling that she writes more contemporary stuff, but she's a very renowned author, and she is very ill and she's dying, so she needs the help of these two girls, as I said before. The funny thing about Wanacott is that she it's very reserved and very kind of um, shy about her things. She's also very kind of rude at some point. So as we try to solve this mystery, we also understand her a little more, I think. So this is the story of two girls who get in contact and have to deal with this writer, but also this is a story about how two girls interact and discover that they have feelings for each other. So the there's a romance, a female romance, which is great. There's a bisexual representation as well here, which is enormously great. But what I love the most is that before going into the romance that I also listed and I will analyze later on, this is a very slow story, and how these two characters, which are very complex and have a lot of background and a lot of baggage, these two characters learn from one another and learn to respect each other. And I love how this is a slow burn romance, a female slow burn romance that deals more with the contemporary issues that are outside the romance, like all the baggage that they have and all the family issues that they deal with. Because what I love the most is what starts only with two girls expands to the more complex issues, that is not just the idea of finding that you love your kind of co-worker, but this book deals with a lot of issues like mental health issues, disability, what else? There's also drug addiction and PTSD and grief, and dealing with grief and dealing with all that anger that grief deals with as well. There's also a third kind of plotline that it's in the past, that it's connected with this mystery that we have to deal with, that is settled in the Second World War and the time before and after the Second World War. And I love that plotline. All these matters are connected in a very strange way, because, as I said before, as the plot expands, you start seeing these connection threads which intertwine and make a complex, lovely, lyrical story. As I said before, I love the main characters. I love how different they are. In my opinion, I believe I like Ophelia more, because she is the character that changes more throughout the story. She discovers things about herself. She tries to heal herself, but she also is very compassionate and tries to help not only her employer but her friend Amoke, who has a very complex situation at home. And when she and Amoke start feeling other things, she is very kind of aware of her feelings, although at the beginning she doesn't know how to deal with them. And it's lovely to see how the two of them kind of get closer and closer and closer. And even so, there are issues along the way. They have problems along the way. They still support each other, and I love that. I love the family members of each of the girls. I love the dynamics. Yes. I love, for example, the importance of the secondary characters. Not only this character that I'm talking about, but when you get to know the secondary characters so intimate, I'm talking about the members of the families in the both sides, in Ophelia's family and also in Amoke's. You get to see how the main characters are, why they are, all the struggle that they went through up to this point at the beginning of the story. And I love that. I love how, although they are secondary characters, they are as rounded as the main characters, as our girls. And I love how they act so natural. it's something about the characters, secondary or main characters, that I love a lot in this story, and in how Andrea Tomé presents them. They feel so natural, and not only because they are actually referring or making references, as I said before, to modern and contemporary culture, but they feel so natural. I loved how this romantic um, plot is intertwined with this mystery plot about the things that we can't quite understand at the beginning of the novel, because they are borderlining, as I said before, the paranormal or the magical realism world. And this is when we are going to talk about the best plot line, in my opinion, because it's the plot that it seems out of context and out of place, but at the end of the day connects all the characters together, and all the plots that you felt, or all the fragments of plot that you felt that they were kind of random out of the blue. And that's the 1945 plotline. In this story we see the life of a family and how they have to go through the years previous to the war, then the Second World War, and what happened after that. What happened after that. And it's my favorite plot because it's very deep, and even if has really hard matters going on, it's very lyrical, and I love that. They are thought or presented as flashbacks, although while you're reading the beginning of the story, you still don't know whose flashbacks those memories or those fragments belong to. But as you go on and you start meeting all these contemporary characters and then jump into the past, there are certain kind of clues about who those fragments belong to. I love how disability is treated, maybe not very deep, and this has to do with a character that is quite young, and he is a secondary character who has to go through this kind of progressive illness that I don't suffer. That my chronic kind of condition is different, but I love how there are things when it comes to disability about what is going to happen next, how we are going to manage when this matter gets worse. As a person with disability, is it best to stay at home and to depend on the people you care the most and love the most, or is it best to go somewhere else, to a place where the people who deal with you or help you through the day are professionals, so you don't have to put all the kind of workload on your relatives or your partners or whatever, whoever is dealing with this situation with you. I loved how this matter was discussed, because even if I don't suffer a progressive illness, a progressive condition, I feel like at some points in my life I have had these internal conflicts while I was growing up, and now as another woman, when I feel like my body is not responding in the same way, and the people I live with, they are also aging, so it's quite complex dynamic and not very nice, but it's important to, or I feel was very nice to see it on paper, and I feel like it should be more present in YA stories and in fiction, adult fiction as well, because it's never considered, I believe, or it's not a point that is actually discussed when it comes to disability in literature or in other medias. The style that it's very present in Andrea Tomé writing, I believe, has to do with, as I said before, contemporary references, but also with kind of lyrical and poetical approach to the things, as a lot of metaphors kind of fly by, and that's really nice because uh, sometimes you have the feeling of being inside a fairy tale, or at least I love how the characters are described and the situations are described as in you would be flying, or that you could get lost in someone else's eyes and things like that. And in this case, in the Second World War plotline, I loved this kind of almost lyrical approach to it, because it's still hard and you still understand what's going on, but it's very well written and it's very soothing in a way. While you are seeing very, very difficult issues, you are drawn by the language and the rhythm, and I love that. In a way, I felt like that plotline specifically remind me a little bit of the film Atonement by Joe Wright, which is one of my favorite films. But I loved how I made this connection, because in this second, in what seems to be a secondary plotline, this Second World War plotline, the story is told by a child, a young girl that grows throughout the whole story, in the same sense that Brioni grows up in the film. And also the film is originally a book, so we all go back to literature. I don't know if Andrea Tomé thought about Atonement as a reference when it came to create this plotline, but it's something that I actually loved to have in my mind, because I was like enjoyed in the same way. And I love how through not only this plotline but through the others, this lyrical style was also present when dealing with difficult issues, not only the ones that I already mentioned, but the plotline or the theme of dealing with grief and death, it's also very present. I love that because I felt like I was understood. I had the misfortune of suffering a couple of personal losses. I had to lose a couple of people that I loved. I felt, and I still feel sometimes, a little bit disconnected, a little bit more inclined to certain feelings that I don't like. So the idea of having someone talking about grief and death and the importance of understanding your grief and allowing your grief to explode when you know that the grief will end, or that explosion will end, and you will have to deal with living while reminiscing and missing people, is very important. Because while I was reading this book, I thought I was healing. I had the feeling of, whenever this topic was brought up and this importance of, do you feel anger? I was angry all the time. It's okay to feel angry. Explore that feeling and let it go through you and let it go away. I love that exploration of grief and stages of grief and the importance of being alive for those who cannot live anymore. I don't know, I felt very deeply the chapters where these two topics were explored, because when a character that talks about it try to explain the importance of allowing someone to go when you cannot stop it, and the importance of still remembering and being angry and sad and relieved is important, because you are human and you will feel for that and you will miss that people, but you are still living. So you cannot stop living because of something you couldn't do or you couldn't change. And especially I felt like all the things that I didn't put into words, that I didn't manage to understand myself, but I haven't, or I hadn't talked to anyone about, were exposed there, and those messages of how to deal with grief were specifically written for me, even though I know they weren't. In summary, I believe this book is very special, is very well written, and it touches a lot of issues and a lot of topics that I haven't seen so clearly in YA. So even though it's only in Spanish, and I only recommend it if the person who is going to read it has a very, very high Spanish level, because of the metaphors and stuff like that, I think you will like this story. This is my video for today. I'll see you next week, okay? Bye!